What I'm about to show you just casually happened in an NBA basketball game, and it is simply one of the most athletically impressive things that you will ever witness in your life. It happened just recently, on October 25th, 2024, in a game with the Indiana Pacers and the New York Knicks. In their own building, New York was winning the game by 31 points with just moments left in the third quarter. There wasn't much excitement in the air, as the outcome had been obvious for quite a while at that point. But it was just then that the Indiana Pacers power forward, Obi Toppin, decided to do something utterly impressive that I've never seen before with my own two eyes. Rather than describing it, I'll just let you see it for yourself.
Nice bounce pass, Jackson fouled, and we've got a pigeon as the ball is stuck by Toppin.
Oh, come on.
I don't know if we get a replay of Toppin, just incredible hops. Toppin, yeah. Toppin. I mean, come on now.
That's ridiculous.
Now what you need to understand is that Obi Toppin is a 6'9" power forward, and he's simply one of the most athletic players that the game of basketball has ever seen. He didn't quite touch the top of the backboard, but he was really, really close, as the basketball was cradled just underneath it. I was so marveled by this clip when I saw it that I immediately texted it to my editor Russell, to which he then texted me back and asked how many other players in NBA history could have done this. And that's where this video comes in, as we take a moment to consider just how rare this feat actually was. Now first off, Obi himself didn't touch the top of the backboard, but maybe he could have, seeing that he was really, really close. For goodness sake, he casually made this leap and snagged the ball out of the air after being pretty exhausted from playing in game action. Who knows what he could have done if he was completely fresh and had all the time to make as many run-ups as he wanted. Now first, I need to let you guys know that touching the top of the backboard isn't in fact impossible, because a young man who goes by KO plays in college for the Memphis Tigers, and in 2023 he made one of the most impressive leaps that we've ever seen, as the 6'10" forward leapt so high that he was able to reach to a measurement equal to the top of the backboard. So at the very least, we know it can be done. But let me paint a picture of just how difficult this is. The average height of the NBA player has been between 6'5" to 6'7" inches tall. A 6'5" player with a 9-foot reach, which is already pretty significant for a player of that size, would then need a 47-inch vertical leap in order to reach the top of the backboard. Some of the greatest leapers in NBA history only get as high as 40 inches off the ground, which is still utterly impressive. So it goes without saying that if there's any players who can do this, they are in a very, very exclusive group. With that being said, a lot of players have claimed that they've achieved the feat. Among those guys saying that they've touched the top of the backboard are Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, David Thompson, Vince Carter, Dwight Howard, James White, and Shawn Marion. But unfortunately, there is no video proof of any of these players achieving the feat. So I'm really interested to hear your suggestions and opinions in the comments section below. But what I'm going to do is say the players who could possibly have done it, and then I'm going to list off the players that I believe could have actually done it in their prime. So first for the maybes. Darrell Griffith, who is known as Dr. Duncanstein. He stood at 6'4" inches tall, and reportedly, he had a 48-inch vertical leap heading into his rookie NBA season. That is a ridiculous vertical leap if it is in fact true. But standing at only 6'4" inches tall, he would still only barely make it to the top of the backboard if his vertical leap was in fact that high. Another player is Julius Erving, who was one of the greatest leapers in NBA history, but I'm going to say he probably couldn't have done it. A guy who claims to have done it is the 6'7" forward Shawn Marion, and they did call him the Matrix as he was one of the best athletes of his era. With that being said, I never saw him achieve a dunk or a leap where his head was clearly above the rim, so I'm going to say he probably couldn't have done it. Another guy is the 6'6" Zion Williamson, who coming into the NBA was one of the most athletically gifted and explosive players that we've ever seen. But again, at only 6'6", I think he'd have a tough time doing it and probably come up just a bit short. Then there's the 6'8" Tracy McGrady, who before the injuries was a legitimate superstar and an athletic freak. With that being said, I don't think he had the same vertical leap as his teammate Vince Carter, so even at 6'8", I do think he'd be a little short. Then there's James Flight White, who stands at 6'7", and this guy has been known to dunk from the free throw line and is a crazy athlete in his own right. He might be able to do it, but I'm not so sure. There's Dominique Wilkins, who stands at 6'8" tall, and although he was a thunderous and ferocious dunker, I think he's a little short. There's Aaron Gordon, who famously put on one of the greatest dunk contest performances of all time, and at 6'8", he might get close, but I don't think he's making it. There's Giannis Antetokounmpo, who stands at 6'11" tall and has quite the wingspan. He might actually get close, but unlike some of these other guys, his vertical leap isn't quite as explosive, so he's probably a bit short. Zach LaVine is 6'5" tall, so personally I think he'd be a bit short, seeing that he needs something ridiculous like a 47 or 48-inch vertical leap. There's the 6'4" Shannon Brown, who during the late 2000s was doing some of the most ridiculous things that I've ever seen a player in a Lakers uniform do. But at only 6'4" tall, it's nearly impossible. Then there's Dwight Howard, who is 6'10" tall and was an athletic freak in his prime. The other thing is that Dwight Howard did dunk a basketball on a 12-foot rim in the NBA dunk contest, and honestly, he did it pretty casually. So there is a chance that he could actually reach 13 feet high and touch the top of the backboard. Then there's David Thompson, who was one of the guys who claimed he could do it, and even some of his peers said he could do it as well. What's tough about Thompson is he played so long ago, and footage of him is extremely limited, seeing that he played in the 1970s. He also only stood at 6'4" tall, and although I have seen him get well above the rim, it's not nearly close enough to make me think that he could touch the top of the backboard. It may be true, but unfortunately, he played in the wrong era for me to believe it. So now let's get to the guys that I think could have done it. Obviously, Obi Toppin. We saw him come darn near close just very casually. With all of his energy, with as many run-ups as he could possibly want, I could honestly see him achieving this feat. Another guy is Vince Carter. He jumped over a 7-footer in the Olympics, and he's widely recognized as the greatest NBA dunker of all time. He's demonstrated a few times how high he could reach on the backboard, but I don't know if that was his limit, and part of me thinks that he'd actually be able to make it. Another guy is the 6'6" Gerald Green, who famously had the windmill slam where he had his head above the rim. Based on that alone, I gotta say he'd at least have a shot. Then there's the 6'6" Michael Jordan. And yes, MJ could glide through the air, he had the hang time, and he dunked from the free throw line on numerous occasions. But nothing makes me think that MJ could do it more so than this ridiculous photo. I understand a little bit probably has to do with the angle, but even with that being considered, just look how high he is above the rim. Look how far above the basket his arm actually goes. Based on this image alone, MJ would have a realistic shot. Another player is LeBron James. In his first stint in Cleveland, at 6'9" tall, LeBron sailed through the air and grabbed a basketball with his head well above the rim. Based on this image, his height, and his wingspan, you gotta imagine that LeBron could get pretty close. And then there's a couple players that I absolutely believe could have done it. And first is the 7'1" Wilt Chamberlain. Wilt was standing at 7'1" tall with a 7'8" wingspan, and he famously had a ridiculous vertical of his own. We only have say 1 to 2% of Wilt's career on footage, and even with those limited highlights, we still have some shots of Wilt reaching his hand way above the rim, to the point that he's very close to the top of the backboard. If he was aiming for it in his prime earlier in his career when he was more slender, I tend to think he could make it. And the last player who I definitely believe could have touched the top of the backboard is the 6'10" Bill Russell. Usually, Wilt Chamberlain's the guy who gets all of the attention when it comes to the ridiculous athleticism while being an NBA center. But Russell was an absurd athlete in his own right, and from a leaping perspective, he was arguably even more impressive. What a lot of people don't know about Russell is that he was actually a track and field athlete, and at one point in his track career, he was listed as the second greatest leaper in the USA and the 7th highest leaper in the entire world. For goodness sake, in 1956, Bill Russell was competing in the high jump competition, and he jumped 6 foot 9.25 inches high, and that tied the mark that was set by Charlie Dumas. Charlie Dumas would later go on to play in the Olympic Games, while Bill Russell opted to follow his basketball career instead. The thing is, Charlie Dumas, who tied Bill Russell for the highest jump, went on to win the gold medal in the Olympic Games. So not only was Russell a world-class leaper, and not only did he have ridiculous hops for a guy standing at 6 foot 10 inches tall, but he was quite possibly the highest leaper in the entire world in 1956. But unfortunately, we didn't get to see him compete in the Olympic Games due to his NBA career. There may be a few NBA players that I think could do it, but none of them am I more sure of than Bill Russell. So what do you guys think? Who is an NBA player, past or present, who you think could touch the top of the backboard? I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comment section below. Thanks for watching as always, make sure to like and subscribe for more basketball content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.